Do you want to maximize your success with NCUA? Join Mark Treichel as he shares with you the insider's view on passing your exam with flying colors. The With Flying Colors podcast is sponsored by Credit Union Exam Solutions by Mark Treichel. If you would like to work directly with the Credit Union Exam Solutions team and receive support to optimize your results with NCUA so you save time and money, visit us at marktreichel.com to find out more.
Hey everyone, this is Mark Treichel with a short take, what happened in credit unions this week, and a couple things I wanted to alert you to. But first, my Tuesday podcast, which are my normal released early Tuesday mornings, I'm going to do a trial of shifting those to Monday because it's going to be a jam-packed, information-loaded NCUA board agenda between now and the end of the year. And I anticipate that I may be doing 2 podcasts occasionally a week. So I want to do one either Monday, Wednesday, or Monday, Thursday. So that gives a little bit of time between them. All right. And so what happened this week is that President Biden made an intent to nominate a new board member, Tanya Otsuka, I presume I'm pronouncing that, Otsuka, formerly of the FDIC, and also a member of Senator Sherrod Brown's, the Democrat from Ohio staff. Of course, Brown came out and saluted the fact that she was being nominated, saluted the fact that she would be the first Asian American on the NCUA board, their 53-year history, which is very cool. Doing a little research on Ms. She's maybe the youngest board member, looking at pictures and looking at what her age appears to be based on her education, maybe the youngest NCUA board member as well. So that's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. Obviously, it's an intent to nominate, doesn't mean she is nominated. There are a lot of steps that go with that. And because of there being a lot of steps that go with that, I'll be recording a podcast this week for a publication very soon with former NCUA board member to talk about the nomination process, the intent to nominate, and all that goes with it. So you can watch for that. Yesterday, in case you missed it, the release that happened on Monday, I talked about NCUA's F insurance briefing, and when I watched that, I mostly focused on what's going on in camel codes, and the velocity of camel code increases are continuing in a negative way in the Camel 3 arena for credit unions over $500 million in assets, but I'm not going to belabor that. If you want more about that topic, listen to the podcast that came out yesterday, Monday. All right. The other thing I wanted to mention is that next week I will have a podcast on Monday about NCUA's new rule, FinTech rule for loan participations, eligible obligations, which makes it a more principle-based rule than a rule that says you cannot go above X percent. So short version of that is you used to have eligible obligations limited to percent, for example. Now, if you think about the old rules on fixed assets and the old rules on member business loans, it said on member business loans, you had to do an LTV of 80%. They got rid of that and made it more principled so that credit unions could decide what to do with that. And that's what they're doing on this rule, something similar. Fixed asset rule, you couldn't go over 5% without coming to NCUA for a waiver. They got rid of all that waiver process and made it more principle-based. That's what this rule does, but I'll have more coming on that next week on that rule, which is a good rule. And I'm going to point out what some of the parts of the rule actually mean. Lastly, what I wanted to talk about on this podcast is during that item, there's a lot of praise for board member Rodney Hood, who was a champion of that rule. So if you like that rule, reach out to Rodney Hood or his chief of staff, Linwood Brooks, because they were instrumental in getting it done. What I found very interesting was that at the meeting, Rodney Hood said to Chairman Harper, Mr. Chairman, I must say I appreciate all that you've done to move my priorities. And as we look to 2024, especially as we look at the budget, I believe there is more that can be done to move some of your priorities. So I look forward to working with you and the vice chairman to do. All right, so that was this past Thursday. And then later that Thursday, the intent to nominate Ms. Otsuka came out, and of course, she would be replacing Rodney Hood. Those things take time. Hood will be around. But Hood was giving some smoke signals, if you will, that he plans to support what Todd Harper wants to do with the budget. Now, I've done many podcasts here to say that Todd is a champion of consumer compliance. I fully believe that is signaling that there's some things coming in consumer compliance. I've also heard through the grapevine that when Chairman Harper spoke at spoke at NAFCU recently, he indicated that there was going to be a more robust consumer compliance program coming for credit unions of a certain asset size. Of course, credit unions over 10 billion have to deal with CFPB. There will be some number below that. I believe back in the day, one of the numbers they tested was $5 billion. And when I say tested, there was a management development group with a project that Todd was part of, and Matt Baloris, who is in charge of consumer financial protection, was either in charge of or was a mentor to. But anyway, both of them had an influence on trying to increase the footprint of consumer compliance at NCUA. So the writing's on the wall. Hood's term is over sooner than later. To quote Sherrod Brown, he says, Ms. Otsuka has dedicated her entire career to fighting for consumers, credit unions, and other small financial institutions. I am anticipating that whatever happens at the budget is going to be a step towards a lot more consumer compliance exams, that possibly things might be centralized into that office a little bit, just like fair lending exams are done from that office. That can be a good thing and that can be a bad thing. I know the regions tend to not like to give those responsibilities up. So I think it's going to be one of these budget years where we want to get popcorn out and pay close attention. Now, they have to do the budget by December. Typically, September, October timeline, you're going to be hearing pretty soon. They probably should have already announced it, which means maybe there's some complications because of some scheduling, but they should be announcing when a budget briefing will be. Some call it a hearing, some call it a briefing. By the way, they're required to do that because NAFCU was able to get the Federal Credit Union Act changed, requiring them to do it. So there should be an announcement of when that's going to be. There should be about a 100-page budget draft document that comes out. And I will digest that and have several podcasts, or at least one podcast on that. And then there will be that briefing that'll happen. And then there will be the board action. So boom, an announcement of boom, an announcement of when the briefing will be, a document that says, here's what we're thinking we're going to spend, the actual briefing, and then the actual vote. And Hood is indicating that he's going to support. So that's a quid pro quo. In my books, that means there have been some gentleman agreements between the advisors behind the scenes that if you support this, I will support that. That's how law and sausage gets done in DC at NCUA. And in any event, strap on a helmet. I think your budget costs are going to go up, but more importantly, I think the exam burden is going to go up as we move more towards a board at NCUA being led by Democrats as opposed to Republicans, because that's going to lead to Harper having the vote. And Hood's already indicating, hey, it's probably going to happen, so I'm going to do some things for you. But when we get out to 2024 for the 2025 budget, that one, you might want to bring some beer and some popcorn and some peanuts for that one. All right, that's it. This is Mark Treichel. I really appreciate you listening. And if you like it, go out on iTunes and give us a 5-star review. I would really appreciate that. This is Mark Treichel signing off with flying colors.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of With Flying Colors. Subscribe on your favorite podcast app to hear future episodes where subject matter experts of all varieties will provide tips on how to achieve success with NCUA. If you would like to learn more about how we assist credit unions, check out our services at marktreichel.com.